Hey, great afternoon, KO fam, and welcome to our Monday recap. I'm hoping that my sound and everything is coming in good because yeah, I'm doing this a little different on today. I am not going to prolong the time. I am going to go ahead on and jump in and dive in so we can talk about all things that from on yesterday and dive into some more about resistance and just recap what we went over on yesterday. Yesterday's scriptures were James 4 and 8, Romans 6:13 through 16, and Romans 7 and 9. And I'm going to be adding in James 4 and 7 and Luke 24 and 25. So I don't know about nobody else, but of course, I'm always getting stirred from Sunday service. I don't know if it's because I'm located and all those other good things, but it just is the way that God is steering us and the way that God is moving through apostle and speaking and letting us know like different places of resistance, and not only to be closed in to one way of looking at something and to expand it out so we can be successful in this walk. Number one, that's amazing to me. I'm just going to dive in. I wrote down a couple different points. I'm not sure if I'll be here, I'm not going to be here a long time. I'm saying that now. But the first point that stood out to me was when Apostle said, "Don't always like what you're committed to." And he was giving the example of like when he first got saved, and I know that we can all relate to that. Like it kicks in that sometimes it makes you feel as if like you're doing the salvation thing, you're walking with God, but there's so much that you're missing because you're turning away from so many different things. And I know that that comes along with the mindset that some that we have, because it's always easier, like apostle said on yesterday, it's so much easier to kind of look from things from a negative standpoint instead of looking at them from the beneficial standpoint or from the good standpoint. Whoever is on, please let me know that you can hear me, please, 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 because I don't want to just be doing this and talking and I'm not being heard. So please let me know that you can hear me. But yeah, so it's like we get ourselves in a position to where we have to make sure that we're keeping our minds and we're keeping ourselves in a place of alignment to where we are not just looking at stuff like it's easy. It is so easy to, even when we look at ourselves to get ourselves together and get ourselves ready just for our day-to-day thing. We can look at our outfits and this can be something wrong. It can be some type of malfunction, anything that goes on, but we don't have time. We got to go ahead and go out the house anyway, and we're all self-conscious all day about, oh my goodness, we are oh my goodness, I see this, I see this about myself, I hear this about myself. And when it comes down to it, nobody else sees it but us. But the way that our minds are geared to always look at the something that we consider negative or look at what is negative, then that's the way it rolls. So we have to make sure that we're keeping ourselves grounded in a place to where, you know what, yes, this seems like a negative thing, but pull the positive things out of it. Apostle said for these next however many days going leading up to the end of this month, we're supposed to be, just taking time and just thinking on from a positive standpoint, and just taking 10 minutes to just think, like, and that makes a difference. That makes such a difference. So the next thing we have is, the next point that Apostle came out with was, desires don't mean you're not saved. Your ability to fight shows your salvation. And that one stood out very, very well, because a lot of times we get into a we get into a we get into a place, or we get into a position to where we will have ourselves, like, I guess, putting the characteristics on, like, oh, okay, well, now that I can check these different things off, like like Apostle said yesterday, like, now that I can check these things off, I don't. This is what I don't do. This is what I don't do. And then we start living to try to make that list Are can you still not hear me? Okay. And we do what we need to do to try to make sure that we're checking off that checklist, or we try to make sure that we're doing, all things to make it seem as if, I have the do's and the don'ts. I have this checklist, and like that it almost gives us the accolades, like we make ourselves feel good about what we're not doing, and all these things, all this, that, and the third. But we have to be mindful of the fact that yes, we may be in a position to where, no, there's stuff that has fallen off of us. There's stuff that we don't partake in anymore, but we cannot get to a place that we get ourselves so high minded that we um that will wind up slipping from a place of like being disciples, and being, for God being able to add to us, and um God being able to add to us, and God being able to show us everything that we need to see, as opposed to just worrying about a checklist and then not going any further, and like thinking that that's our stopping point because we got this checklist. We done made it from 1 to 20 on this checklist, so now we have nothing else that we have to worry about, and we have to be very, very careful in that. And it says, in James 7, it says, submit yourselves unto God, then submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. So when we're in a position, like when I seen that point, like, don't desires don't mean you're not saved. Your ability to fight shows that, like, when the more that we resist the devil, the more that we keep ourselves in a place to where, you know what, yeah, this may be coming up, this may be happening, but I'm not going to give into it. I'm not going to give into it. I'm not going to give into it. Then that's when he starts fleeing. Like everything that God has us in, it's like action. Like, yeah, it's easy to, to think that it's just like a little certain point of, okay, well, if I, long as I'm not this and not that. But there's a lot of action that comes along with the faith that we have in being able to do what being able to do what we're doing. I am trying to see how I can block, but maybe I'm the only one that's on YouTube. But I don't think I can block anything on YouTube at the moment. Okay, so yeah, so it says, submit yourselves then to God, resist the devil, and he will flee you. So that's the whole thing. Like the more that we resist, the more that we submit ourselves to God, the more that we'll see the changes coming. Um the next point was, we are not just living, we are living not we're not just living not to sin, but we're living to follow God. And again, like it's easy to get caught up in the point of making sure that you feel like you're doing everything right. But you still got to have that position. Apostle said it's so great yesterday. We still got to have ourselves in a position to where God can lead us and guide us, and we can follow him, that we can move in the way that he would have us to move, and we can do what he would have for us to do. And again, there's nothing wrong with making sure that we're keeping ourselves from sin, and we're keeping ourselves, in a clean and pure place. But we have to make sure that that does not take precedence over where God wants to take us. Because we can get so caught up in, okay, I'm not going to sin, I'm not going to sin, I'm not going to sin, but our feet are just going to stand still. We're not moving anywhere. We're not doing anything. And that's what we got to be careful of. All this reminds me, for real, all these points, it really reminds me of a place of deliverance. It really reminds me of a place of, like, once we get delivered, and once we, are once we get saved, and then once we go through, initial deliverance things, and if we haven't, then we actually should. And we're making sure that we're allowing God to those deep rooted things that were on the inside of us before we got saved, before we came into the knowledge of him, the stuff that we open ourselves up to, we make sure that, we go before him, we get deliverance. And all these steps is just like walking out our deliverance. Because once you get delivered, like, yeah, you're delivered, you're set free, but there's still work that you have to do. You have to work to maintain that. You have to work to keep yourself in a position to where, you know what, I let go of ABCD. So now I have to make sure that I'm not adding on to ABCD. Like now EFG is behind that, and I got to make sure that that's not going to lead me back to ABC. Like I hope I'm making sense just a little bit, because in Luke 24 and 25, it's like once you get rid of certain things and once you get rid of certain spirits, they're trying to come back and they're trying to see whether or not your house is well kept, whether or not it's clean, whether or not it's clean, or are they going to be able to come back in and occupy. And that's something that we have to be very mindful of when it comes to moving in this thing and doing what God has for us to do. Like we're maintaining and we're walking and we're moving, and that's the place of resistance. Resistance is just like a step in deliverance. Like you're resisting the devil so he can flee from you. You're allowing yourself to not only be delivered but stay delivered, because that's what we know God wants us to do. Like there's nothing like you think about it, like the deep rooted things. Apostle says something about carrying around dead weight. You think about it, like if you were somebody that used to smoke cigarettes, and then when it comes down to it, I mean, you about 10 years out, you haven't touched one, you don't want no nicotine, you don't want no parts of it. But then something super duper duper stressful, something happens, it's just catastrophic, and the first thing that comfort thing, the first thing where that dead weight is, hey, here's my opportunity. You want to spark one up. Some people fall for it, some people don't. But you think about like how subtle and how quick that can happen. And it's not that you're trying to, it's not like you want to fall, but in the same token, because that dead weight is still in there, it's always trying. Just like I told y'all in Luke 24:25. These spirits, these things are always trying to see how far you have made it, how far you really, because if not, they want to try to come in and attach back to it because they consider you their home. They consider you somewhere where they can just have lodging and free room and board, and and just go along with you. Because honestly, we all know the enemy does not want us to make it to our full potential. He didn't make it, he doesn't want us to make it. The enemy did not, the enemy was not able to get to the places that we are, and he hates us for that. So of course, somebody that hates us is always setting snares, always setting traps, always trying to move against all those different things. So with that being said, we have to be careful, and we have to be sure that we are allowing ourselves and we are moving in the direction, and we are moving in the direction of follow that God wants us to move in. Because us following God, us following his way, it's imperative to what we do, because it's easy to get caught up now in all things that are going on. It's easy to get caught up in following the trends, following what people say, following what seems nice, following what seems good. And when it really comes down to it, like, yeah, it may seem good, it may sound good, but what is God calling it? What is God calling you to do? What is God telling you to say? Those are the places and those are the things that we have to make sure that we're mindful of. I hope that this Monday recap, it brought some more clarity. These, even from the places of where I seen it as, from where my eyes look, from where my mind goes to the deliverance standpoint. It's just like being in a place to where I used to do a segment called Minding Your Deliverance. Like, we have to make sure that we're putting ourselves in a position to, we're doing what God wants us to do, and we're following him, and we're keeping ourselves in a place of keeping ourselves safe, keeping ourselves in a place to where he can lead us and we can follow without no problem. All right. So thank y'all so much. Join us later on tonight. We have our midnight prayer. Then Tuesday morning, we have our Tuesday as our fast day. We also have 6 a.m. prayer on Tuesday, revive nights on Wednesday, and we have our 6 a.m. prayer on Thursday. And again, we thank you for joining us for this Monday recap. I hope something in here, you can take away something in here. Bless you all, and y'all have a great day in purpose.